Thanks for joining us. 8 Toronto police officers have been injured on the job since yesterday. As Dale Manukduk shows us, the officers were hurt in 3 separate incidents, with some sent to hospital.
Around 8:30 Tuesday morning, officers responded to the area of Bathurst Street and Lawrence Avenue for a call about a man being threatened. When they arrived, police alleged the suspect became violent, throwing hot water off of the stove towards officers and hitting one in the head with an unknown object.
This morning was a sobering moment for us, and for me as the chief, when I am being briefed on the injuries our officers are experiencing.
Toronto police say the one officer who had the object thrown at him required staples to close the cut on his head. 5 other officers were injured as well. The suspect was arrested on scene and also taken to hospital with non-life-threatening injuries. On Monday, 2 other officers suffered injuries, one while responding to a bail compliance check, the other during a robbery in progress. One of the officers suffered a cut ear, the other a torn Achilles tendon.
They're serious to the extent that they required some medical treatment in a hospital, but everybody's out of hospital and will be fine and recovering. And it speaks to the incredible dedication of our members and incredible challenging circumstances that they work under.
Those circumstances are a city experiencing a spike in crime over the last few years. In both 2023 and 2024, there was a roughly 20% increase in major crimes, which includes homicides, assaults, and break-and-enters. This year, more officers will be added to the service.
At the end of 2025, we'll see an increase of 109 officers, 70 of which will be directly allocated to the front line.
During the city's budget meeting, police officials were present to defend the $46 million budget increase. Unlike last year when there were issues with the mayor over police funds, the increase is expected to pass with ease as the force committed to a multi-year hiring plan.
As our city grows, if our service don't grow with it, then what you have seen is the police are saying, and others are saying, hey, when you call 911, you have to wait an extra long time. Last year, because of our investment, it is big, they were able to cut 6 minutes off from the wait times.
The police budget is expected to surpass $1.2 billion this year, with more than 5,500 officers on the force. Dale Manukduk, CBC News, Toronto.
As you saw in Dale's story there, it's budget day at City Hall. Councillors have been digging into the mayor's spending plan for the year. That also includes a 6.9% property tax increase. Sarah McMillan crunches the numbers.
For too long, living in Toronto has become really difficult. Rent is too expensive, subways break down too often, too many kids are hungry, and police and paramedics are taking too long to arrive when Torontonians need them most.
Transit, police, and housing top the list of services that get extra money in this budget. Chow kicked off the budget season by promising improved TTC services and a freeze on fares. She also took a different tack this year when approaching the police budget, saying early on she supported the $46.2 billion budget increase the police were asking for. An increase the chief says will help improve safety, though he says it will take some time.
We are on a journey, and this is the 2nd year of that journey, and a very important year because we do have a little more predictability as far as hiring. So we will continue to focus on core service delivery and continue to be very focused on the sense of safety and security people have in the city and addressing their concerns.
Chow has also promoted investments in school food programs and extending library hours across the city. Outside City Hall today, some rallied in support of the investments in the budget.
Property taxes have been kept artificially low because transit riders have been asked to pay more and more over the years. Toronto still has one of the lowest property tax rates in the GTA, so we have to put that into perspective.
Though support has certainly not been unanimous, particularly for the tax increase that comes with those investments.
It's easy to spend money. It's harder to make choices, and I don't think any hard choices will actually be made.
We opened a new subway line.
And efforts to amend the budget this afternoon got heated at times.
What do you intend to cut?
Councillor, not precluding that. I'm looking, and I've asked staff to find further efficiencies, okay? Further efficiencies.
Efforts to make cuts to the budget and to reduce property taxes did not succeed today. Now, this budget meeting has been a little bit different from your typical budget meeting for a couple of reasons. For one thing, Council was actually in recess for more than half an hour this afternoon after the meeting was interrupted by protesters. And for another thing, U.S. tariffs also became part of the discussion today, with conversations about how the city should respond and if that should inform the budget. Sarah McMillan, CBC News, Toronto.
A neighborhood in North York is sounding the alarm after an elderly woman crossing the street was hit and killed by a dump truck. Ali Chiasson takes us through what happened, and a warning: some viewers may find some of the video in this story disturbing.
The police tape frames the tragic scene on Wilson Avenue. A pedestrian killed, and the dump truck that struck her is nearby.
It is reported that an 81-year-old female was walking through the crosswalk northbound on Wilson Avenue when she was struck by a right-turning dump truck behind me that was turning right on Wilson Avenue. Citizens in the area immediately attempted first aid, but unfortunately she succumbed to her injuries.
You can see in this surveillance footage obtained from a nearby business. We'll stop it before the impact, but the woman is at the crosswalk, waiting to go. She starts walking just as the dump truck starts to turn. The collision reconstruction team is investigating, and footage is going to be important as they piece together what happened. The driver remained on scene and is cooperating with police.
Even if somebody was driving in the area with dash cam footage, we could always use that as well.
Wilson Avenue is a very busy street. All day cars, and dump trucks included, are exiting off the highway at this intersection and onto Wilson. Residents and workers around here know all too well how dangerous it can be.
Just 3 weeks ago, a 7-year-old elderly woman got killed over there by a vehicle on Faywood Boulevard. This is my everyday route. Every day I come here all the time, and when I see traffic, when I hear the ambulance, when I see the police cars, oh my gosh, something else, really something else.
It's the second time a dump truck has hit a pedestrian in less than a week. A woman was gravely injured on Thursday.
It's more than just a life that we lost today.
The 81-year-old woman was pronounced dead on scene. The investigation is ongoing. No charges have been laid at this time. Ali Chiasson, CBC News, Toronto.
Longtime Maple Leafs PA announcer Paul Morris has died.
Toronto penalty to number 15, Dmitry Mironov, 2 minutes for hooking. Time 7:42.
The Leafs announced the news on social media. He was at the microphone when the Buds last captured the Stanley Cup back in 1967. He retired from the role at the end of the 98-99 season. Morris is survived by his wife, Marion. He was 86. Turning to the campaign trail, PC leader Doug Ford has taken his Ontario election campaign tour south of the border. He's in Washington trying to share an anti-tariff message with a U.S. audience. Mike Crawley is there too. He has more on whether that message will make its way to the White House.
Thank you so much for being here.
Doug Ford takes the stage at what's billed as a speech to the U.S. Chamber of Commerce.
I just want to tell you, I love the U.S. I love the American people.
Turns out Ford's audience in this Washington hotel is largely Canadian. Finding an actual American business person in the crowd proves hard.
I'm Josh Morgan. I'm the mayor of the City of London.
I'm a co-president of AGS Automotive, one of the oldest auto parts companies in Canada.
Still, Ford makes his plea against tariffs.
Let's stick together and please get the message to President Trump. This is not a good idea for both countries. Thank you, and God bless you.
What's not clear is whether anyone here has the power to get that message to Donald Trump, and if they did, whether it would make any difference.
I give the Premier huge credit for coming to try to fight the good fight, but I'm not sure much can change Donald Trump's mind at this point.
Eric Miller is American. He runs a cross-border trade consultancy here in Washington. What he thinks it will take to stop Trump?
Unfortunately, I think you're going to have to see pain. It's when you start seeing stock markets go down, when you start seeing vehicle plants close, when you start seeing the price of beef go up, when you start seeing the price of energy go up. That is what will get through to President Trump.
The PC party paid for Ford, his candidates, and his staff to make this trip. The provincial government covered the cost of today's event, including giving out copies of this glossy brochure pitching what Ford calls Fortress AmCan. Meanwhile, back in Ontario, Ford's rivals slam his trip.
He's not there in Washington to protect our jobs, because the only job he wants to protect is his own.
In doing this in the middle of an election, people see his calling of the election as a very cynical move at a time when we needed to be not distracted.
This building behind me is part of the Library of Congress, and it's where Doug Ford is holding a reception together with a senator from North Dakota. Now, this is about 2 miles from the White House, and that is about as close as Ford is going to get to having a meeting with Donald Trump on this trip. Mike Crawley, CBC News, Washington.
Closer to home, the Ontario Liberals making campaign promises geared towards young people, including supports for college and university students. Queen's Park reporter Lorenda Redekop looks at the plan and finds out how it stacks up with the other parties.
Liberal leader Bonnie Crombie met with students at George Brown College with a blunt message about what life is like for their age group in Ontario.
I'll go so far as to say that our young people are getting screwed.
She says she'll keep the tuition freeze the PCs have in place, but promises to boost money going to colleges and universities. Noting Ontario is last in the country for that funding. And she's promising a big change for international student numbers, capping them at 10% of enrollment at every college and university.
We have to fund our colleges and universities properly, because right now what's happening is they're relying on foreign students to pay the bills. And that is not a sustainable model. In fact, that's a Ponzi scheme.
She also promises a change to the student loan program, OSAP, removing interest payments, increasing the time to pay them back, and upping the income threshold for when those payments begin to $50,000.
Well, we're going to start with funding post-secondary education properly.
The NDP leader was asked what she'd do.
We're going to turn student loans into grants, and we're going to cut interest on existing student loans. But the critical piece to all of this is listening to the sector.
She'd also keep the tuition freeze, but has another plan for student loans. The Green Party has said it would reverse the PC's cuts to OSAP and make sure universities are better funded.
It would require an additional $5 billion investment just to bring our post-secondary education funding up to the national average. So Ford's failure to invest in post-secondary education hurts our economy, it hurts young people, and it hurts businesses.
A statement from the PCs points to the $1.3 billion they added last year to stabilize the sector. It's far less than the province's advisory panel had recommended. Tough to get answers from the government at the time.
You're not actually answering the questions, Minister. What are you going to do to make up for the loss of international student revenue?
What I'm doing today is investing $1.3 billion.
Colleges Ontario responded to the Liberal plan, saying a 10% cap on international students would be a crushing blow to a critically underfunded sector. However, the Liberals say they'll also be adding money, but it's not clear how much. They make no mention of how much this will all cost, and that's been a recurring theme for the parties in this campaign. But the Liberals, they say that information will be coming soon. Lorenda Redekop, CBC News, Toronto.
Coming up, we'll bring you more coverage of the Ontario election. Chris Glover spoke with polling expert Eric Grenier to get a sense of where the race stands according to the latest data. Some good news for Raptors fans. According to reports, the team has agreed to a 3-year contract extension with Brandon Ingram. The Raps acquired the 6'8" forward in last week's trade deadline, sending Bruce Brown, Kelly Olynyk, and 2 draft picks to New Orleans. The deal includes a player option for the 27-28 season. To Scarborough Town Centre now, where young artists are in the spotlight, unveiling a 90-meter Black History Month gallery.
We didn't really have an exact plan. We kind of just okay, let's just play around for a little bit and see where it takes us, and this is where it took us.
It's really validating, especially as a creative, with not that much exposure. It's really validating to see your work like this.
The exhibit is part of a year-long collaboration between the Remix Project and Oxford Properties, aiming to empower aspiring artists facing barriers in the industry. We are heading into a quick break now. We're back with you in 3 minutes.
The ongoing issue of U.S. tariffs continues to dominate the provincial election campaign, and polls continue to show that PC leader Doug Ford is capitalizing from it. So far, the polls are showing the PCs are expected to keep their majority and possibly even increase it. Polling expert Eric Grenier is here to talk about what he is seeing in the numbers. Since the last time that we spoke, Eric, a lot has happened, everything from the tariff pause to Super Bowl ads, and yet the overall numbers haven't really changed, have they?
No, they really haven't. If we're looking at what the polls look like today based on the average of all the polls that are out there, PCs still have a big lead. They're polling somewhere around 45% support. The Liberals are in second, somewhere around 27%. The NDP is in third at 19%. And if we try to take those poll numbers and turn them into seats, in all likelihood, we're still looking at a big PC majority government, probably bigger than they won in 2022. And the real fight might be for second place between the Liberals and the NDP. Those two parties are still vying for roughly the same number of seats. But even though the polls show the Liberals solidly in second place in voting intentions, in the seats, it still could be quite a race.
Okay, so that's the overall picture. How does the polling break down for different demographic groups?
Yeah, we have seen some interesting gender divides in particular. The PCs usually do very well among men, usually over 50% support, have a big lead over both the Liberals and the NDP. We do see that among women, it is a much closer race. The PCs do lead, but the gap between them and the two other parties is a lot smaller. If we're looking at the age breakdowns, we generally see that the older you are, the more likely you are to vote for the PCs and to a lesser extent for the Liberals. The younger you are, the more likely you are to vote for the NDP and the Greens. But we've seen in past elections that turnout in Ontario can be quite low, and the people who do tend to go out and vote tend to be older. So it is another advantage for Doug Ford and the PCs.
What are you seeing in terms of regional breakdown and support?
Yeah, we're not really seeing any movement there either. Pretty steady as it's been for the last little while. PCs and the Liberals are fighting for the support in Toronto. The NDP has moved into third place there. In the GTA, PCs have a big lead. Big lead for the PCs as well is in southwestern Ontario and eastern Ontario, even in the north. So there's not really much of a regional difference in that very positive map for the PCs, at least at this stage of the campaign.
Okay, now aside from President Trump and those tariffs, what provincial issues are catching the attention of voters?
Yeah, we definitely see that the tariff and Donald Trump has been a big issue during the campaign, but it usually only ranks around third in the issue set in the polling that we've seen. The two issues that always poll the highest, cost of living and healthcare. Those are the two issues that voters are thinking about the most. We do see that when it comes to which party is most trusted to handle these issues, if it's tariffs and Donald Trump, PCs have a big lead on cost of living, on the economy. PCs are also ahead. On healthcare, though, there is a smaller gap between the PCs and the other two parties.
Okay, and speaking of the other major parties, certainly Doug Ford and the PCs have a bit of a lead here. So is there enough time to have those other leaders break through?
I mean, technically, there is enough time to do it. There is still 2 weeks and a few days, and we have seen the polls shift in a smaller amount of time in some past campaigns. The 2018 election in particular, in the first couple of weeks, the NDP just took off. But what we're not really seeing here is a sign that that is about to happen. Often you see that the party leaders, if one is about to take off in the polls, their own personal ratings might be increasing, but the party ratings aren't catching up. We're not really seeing anything like that. Both Bonnie Crombie of the Liberals and Merritt Stiles of the NDP remain largely unknown to a lot of Ontarians. We haven't seen a lot of movement in the numbers for them. There will be some debates in the next couple weeks that could give them a stage that they desperately need with Doug Ford. That could be an opportunity to see some movement in the polls. But things have been very steady in Ontario for a while. It's a big lead for the PCs. It'll take a lot for the PCs to lose this campaign.
All right, Eric. Well, thank you very much for the polling update. Appreciate it.
All right, thank you.
Eric Grenier is a polling analyst and the founder of the election newsletter, The Writ. He will be with us every Tuesday throughout the campaign.
Colette Kennedy is here tracking this storm. It sounds like it's just going to be a mess. There's so many aspects to it.
Yeah, that's right. Different types of precipitation. You used a word earlier today, Shannon. You said a doozy.
Yeah, that's what it feels like.
I think that's a really good way to describe this because of all the variables here. And so I'm going to do my best to walk everyone through this and what you can expect, where, and the timing as well. So we'll start off looking at what we have in terms of our warnings at this place. So Toronto, yes, the GTHA here in a snowfall warning. So it's going to differ depending where you are, but we're talking about a widespread area where it's 15 centimeters to upwards of 30 centimeters. Further east, where you see the areas in red, winter storm warning. On the back side of this, we're also going to get into some problems with some very strong winds on Thursday. So areas where we have snow, it will be blowing around. So even though the event itself will be ending, there's still going to be visibility, travel issues too. And then for the Niagara region, right back into southwestern Ontario, that area has been upgraded from the special weather statement to a winter weather travel advisory because there'll be a little more mixing there along the north shore of Lake Erie likely. So some freezing rain and rain coming in there, and also for the Niagara region. So your timing here, pushing into the GTA, this is 4 p.m. tomorrow afternoon where I've stopped this, and taking over southwestern Ontario as well. And then as we go through the overnight, the temperature starts to come up. You see it's mostly rain, a little bit of that mixing area in pink there through Grimsby and over towards St. Catharines and Niagara Falls. But elsewhere, this is largely in the cold sector, the way this looks like it's going to be tracking. It's such a close call. And with that, it means staying in the snowfall in terms of the type of precipitation for longer hours. So getting into snowfall rates of 2 to 4 centimeters per hour in some cases. This is 8 a.m. Thursday, still happening in eastern Ontario. It's moved out of the Golden Horseshoe region and even up the Bruce Peninsula largely until those lake effect squalls kick in. But keeping in mind, strong winds all day Thursday will be blowing the snow around. So let's just give you some perspective here. Taking you from Hamilton around to Oshawa, you can see that range. We'll put Hamilton up to just say 15, okay? So you're looking at like 15 to about 25 around the GTA, lesser amounts for St. Catharines because of that mixing, and then to the north, to the east, that's where we get into that potential of 30 centimeters or some pockets where locally it may actually be even more than 30 centimeters. So that is what we're dealing with. Wednesday, overnight, and then into Thursday.
So it's like stay home, stay inside, take
it
transit.
easy. Yeah, take some breaks once you get shoveling.
Yeah.
Deep breaths, bend the knees.
Thanks so much, Colette. That's it for us. We'll see you again soon.